My beloved child, before you decide that today is just another ordinary day, notice the quiet feeling that led you here. It did not arrive by accident. There are moments when a single realization begins changing someone's entire perspective without making a sound. Imagine a person standing in front of a window during a heavy storm, believing the sky will never clear. Then, almost unnoticed, a small beam of light breaks through the clouds. Nothing dramatic happens in that instant, yet everything begins to look different. What if someone has recently experienced a moment just like that? What if a memory they once ignored suddenly returned with unexpected clarity? What if they finally understood the value of something they never fully appreciated before? Stay a little longer, because this story is only opening its first page. The greatest discoveries never rush into the spotlight. They arrive quietly, waiting for the right heart to recognize them. There is something remarkable about the way understanding appears. It does not always come through grand events or unforgettable conversations. Sometimes it arrives during the simplest moments, when the mind grows still enough to connect pieces that once seemed unrelated. Imagine reading an old journal and suddenly seeing a sentence in a completely different way than you did years before. The words never changed, but your understanding did. Life has a mysterious way of revealing truth only after enough growth has taken place. Perhaps somewhere beyond your view, another heart has been revisiting memories with new eyes, noticing details that once passed unnoticed, and recognizing the quiet kindness, patience, or strength that was always present. Before you move on, ask yourself one question. What if the greatest realization is not about the past itself, but about finally understanding its true meaning? Wait until the final moment before deciding where this journey is leading, because the next chapter uncovers a truth that changes everything you have heard so far. One final thought before this chapter closes. Imagine assembling a puzzle without knowing what the finished picture looks like. Each new piece seems ordinary until suddenly the image begins to appear. That is where this story now stands. The first pieces have fallen into place, but the picture is far from complete. There is one hidden realization still waiting beyond the next chapter, and it explains why certain memories return at unexpected times and why some hearts change only after life teaches them lessons they could never learn any other way. Stay with this journey a little longer. What comes next is not simply another chapter, it is the moment when scattered emotions begin forming one unforgettable story. A quiet shift has already begun, even though almost no one would recognize it at first glance. Picture an old lighthouse standing through countless seasons of wind and rain. From far away, it seems unchanged year after year. Yet inside, every light, every mechanism, every careful adjustment continues working with a single purpose: to guide those who are searching for their way. The heart often changes in the same silent manner. What appears still on the outside may be filled with reflection, growth, and understanding within. What if someone has recently looked back on moments they once hurried past and suddenly realized how much they truly mattered? Stay a little longer. The next piece of this journey is closer than you think, and leaving now could mean missing the very moment everything begins to connect. There are realizations that arrive through words, and there are realizations that arrive through silence. The second kind is often the most powerful. Imagine hearing a familiar melody after many years. The music has not changed, yet every note now carries a meaning it never held before. That is how life gently transforms perspective. A single memory can return with new significance. A forgotten conversation can suddenly explain an entire chapter. The heart begins asking different questions, not because the past has changed, but because understanding has grown. Somewhere beyond your sight, another journey may be unfolding in exactly this way. Regret may be turning into gratitude. Confusion may be giving way to clarity. Appreciation may finally be replacing everything that once stood in its way. Before you draw any conclusions, ask yourself this: what if tears are not always a sign of sadness? What if they sometimes appear because someone has finally understood the value of what they once overlooked? You will understand everything at the end, but not quite yet. Now the atmosphere feels different. The mystery is no longer about whether something meaningful is happening. It is about why this change is happening now. Every chapter has quietly been leading toward an answer that cannot be rushed. Imagine watching the first stars appear after sunset. One by one they brighten the sky until an entirely new picture becomes visible. That is where this story now stands. The next chapter will reveal why timing has been the hidden force behind every memory, every realization, and every quiet emotion. When that truth begins to unfold, the title will no longer feel like a question. It will feel like the missing piece that has been waiting for the right moment to be understood. There comes a point in every meaningful journey when the smallest realization becomes more powerful than the biggest promise. Imagine walking through a gallery filled with unfinished paintings. At first, every canvas appears incomplete, leaving you wondering what the artist intended. Then you step back just a little farther, and suddenly every painting connects to form one breathtaking masterpiece. That is how understanding often arrives. It does not create a new story. It reveals the one that has been quietly unfolding all along. What if someone has finally stepped back and seen your shared story from an entirely different perspective? What if the moments they once dismissed now carry more meaning than they ever imagined? Stay with this journey a little longer. The turning point is closer than it has ever been. Think about a mirror that has been covered with dust for years. It was always capable of reflecting the truth, but until the surface was cleared, everything remained blurred. Life has a remarkable way of clearing that surface through experience. Every challenge, every unexpected delay, and every lesson gently removes another layer until clarity finally appears. Somewhere beyond what you can see today, another heart may be experiencing that very process. The questions that once created confusion are slowly being replaced with understanding. The uncertainty that once shaped every decision is giving way to quiet confidence. What if the tears mentioned in this story are not about losing something, but about finally realizing how deeply something mattered all along? Before you move to the next chapter, hold that question close. It carries a truth that cannot be understood too quickly. Some answers become meaningful only after the heart has learned to see beyond appearances. Now the story begins gathering every clue into one direction. The memories, the silence, the unexpected emotions, and the quiet reflections are no longer scattered pieces. They are becoming one complete picture. Yet there is still one important layer waiting to be revealed. It explains why this realization happened now instead of years ago and why certain journeys require patience before they reveal their true purpose. Stay until the final moment. The next chapter will uncover the deeper reason behind every quiet change and every hidden lesson, bringing you closer to a conclusion that feels both surprising and completely natural, as though every chapter was always meant to lead you here. The path is becoming clearer, yet its greatest meaning is still waiting just beyond the horizon. Imagine watching a bridge emerge through the morning mist. At first, you can only see the beginning, leaving the destination hidden from view. With every step forward, another section appears until you realize the bridge was complete all along. You simply could not see it from where you stood. Life often unfolds in the same quiet way. What once seemed like separate memories now begin connecting with remarkable precision. The moments that felt ordinary reveal unexpected significance. The silence that once felt confusing begins to sound like preparation rather than absence. Stay a little longer. You are approaching the part of the journey where every earlier question starts becoming an answer, and what seemed impossible to understand begins to feel surprisingly clear. There is another thought worth holding on to. Real transformation is rarely announced. It grows quietly through reflection, humility, and the willingness to see yesterday through wiser eyes. Picture someone opening an old box filled with photographs they have not looked at for years. At first, they expect only memories. Instead, they discover perspective. Every image reminds them of something they failed to appreciate at the time. Every forgotten detail now carries a meaning that could only be recognized after enough growth had taken place. What if that is exactly what has been happening? What if the tears in this story were never about regret alone, but about finally recognizing the depth of a connection that had always deserved greater care? Before you decide where this story is leading, ask yourself one quiet question. If understanding arrives at the right moment, can it completely change the direction of everything that follows? Wait until the final moment, because one essential truth is still waiting to be revealed. Now the atmosphere feels different than it did at the beginning. The mystery is no longer built on uncertainty. It is built on anticipation. Every chapter has quietly carried you toward one final realization that ties every reflection together. The title spoke of overwhelming emotion, but the deeper message reaches beyond a single feeling. It is about the power of awareness to transform the way people see their past, their present, and the possibilities still waiting ahead. Hold on to that thought for just a little longer. The next chapter will reveal why every delay, every lesson, and every quiet change had to happen exactly as they did, and why the ending of this journey could never have been understood without first walking through every chapter that came before it. Something remarkable is beginning to settle into place. Not with noise, not with urgency, but with the kind of clarity that only appears after enough time has passed. Imagine an old watchmaker carefully restoring a timepiece that has not moved for years. Every tiny adjustment seems insignificant on its own, yet with patience, every gear begins working together again. Then, without warning, the hands begin to move. The watch was never beyond repair. It simply needed every piece to return to its proper place. What if the heart follows the same rhythm? What if someone has finally reached the moment where every memory, every lesson, and every unanswered question has aligned into one unmistakable realization? Stay a little longer. You are closer than ever to understanding why this story has unfolded exactly as it has. There is a quiet truth that many people discover only after they have traveled far enough through life. They realize that the greatest connections are not measured by how often two people spoke or how many moments they shared. They are measured by how deeply those moments continue to shape them long after they have passed. Picture a single candle lighting another. The first candle loses nothing by sharing its flame, yet the room becomes brighter because of it. Meaningful relationships leave that kind of lasting light. Somewhere beyond your view, another heart may be recognizing that certain acts of kindness, patience, or understanding never truly disappeared. They remained, waiting to be appreciated when the right perspective finally arrived. What if the tears mentioned in the title were not the ending of a story, but the beginning of a completely new understanding? Hold on to that thought. The answer is just beyond the next chapter, and once it is revealed, every earlier moment will carry a deeper meaning than you first imagined. Now the journey stands at the edge of its final revelations. The scattered pieces have almost formed a complete picture. Every chapter has quietly prepared you for one concluding truth that cannot be rushed. Imagine standing before a door that has slowly been opening throughout this entire story. There is only a narrow space left before the full view appears. The next chapter will not simply continue the journey, it will reveal why every quiet lesson, every unexpected pause, and every emotional turning point belong to the same path from the very beginning. Stay until the end. The greatest understanding is no longer far away. It is waiting just beyond the next page, where every clue finally comes together in one unforgettable conclusion. The journey has reached the moment where every quiet detail begins pointing toward the same truth. Imagine watching the final pieces of a mosaic being placed one by one. For a long time, each piece seemed unrelated, almost ordinary on its own. Then, with the addition of just one more piece, the entire picture suddenly becomes visible. That is where this story now stands. Stay a little longer. You might miss the turning point if you leave now. What if the realization that brought tears was never caused by a single memory, but by seeing every memory together for the very first time? Sometimes the heart does not awaken through one extraordinary event. It awakens when countless small moments finally reveal the depth of what they always meant. The kindness once overlooked becomes unforgettable. The patience once taken for granted becomes priceless. The quiet support that seemed ordinary becomes impossible to ignore. In that instant, everything is seen through completely different eyes. Now imagine someone standing beneath a sky filled with stars, believing they are scattered without purpose. Then another person traces invisible lines between them, revealing a constellation that had always been there. Nothing in the sky changed. Only the understanding did. Life often moves with that same quiet wisdom. Every chapter has been shaping perspective until one day the heart can finally recognize what it could never see before. Somewhere beyond your view, another journey may have reached that exact point. The questions that once created distance have slowly become answers. The uncertainty that once clouded every decision has been replaced by quiet confidence. The tears spoken of in this story are not a sign of weakness. They are the natural response to finally understanding the value of something that was present all along. Wait until the final moment before deciding how this story ends, because one last truth remains hidden behind the final page. Only one chapter now remains. It carries the answer that connects every reflection, every pause, every unexpected feeling, and every lesson into one complete picture. The title promised a powerful realization, but the deepest meaning has always reached beyond emotion alone. The final chapter will reveal why growth mattered more than speed, why awareness mattered more than certainty, and why this message arrived precisely when its meaning could be fully understood. Hold on just a little longer. The conclusion is ready to reveal the single truth that gives purpose to every chapter you have traveled through, and when that final truth appears, the entire journey will feel complete. The final truth is quieter than most people expect, yet it carries the greatest meaning of all. Throughout this journey, you may have been waiting for one dramatic moment to explain everything. Instead, the answer has been growing gently through every chapter. The title spoke of a heart overwhelmed with tears, but those tears were never meant to represent despair. They represented clarity. They marked the instant when scattered memories, overlooked moments, and forgotten acts of kindness suddenly formed one complete picture. Sometimes the greatest realization is not discovering something new. It is finally seeing what has been there all along. A meaningful connection is not built on perfect timing alone. It is strengthened by patience, appreciation, understanding, and the willingness to grow into someone who truly values what matters. That is the quiet miracle hidden inside this story. Now look back at every step you have taken through this journey. The silence that once felt confusing became a place where wisdom quietly grew. The waiting that once seemed endless became the season that prepared deeper understanding. The memories that returned again and again were never there to hold anyone in the past. They were gentle reminders that genuine care, respect, and sincerity leave lasting impressions that time cannot easily erase. Imagine reading the final sentence of a beautiful novel and suddenly realizing that the first chapter had been pointing toward this ending from the very beginning. That is the perspective this story hopes to leave with you. Whatever the future brings, meet it with a heart that has learned from every lesson instead of one that remains trapped by yesterday. The greatest opportunities often arrive when people have become wiser than they were before, not simply because enough time has passed. As this story reaches its final page, carry one thought with you. Never underestimate the quiet changes that happen within the heart when no one else is watching. Those unseen moments often shape the most meaningful chapters of life. Continue choosing patience when the answers seem distant. Continue choosing gratitude for every lesson that has helped you grow. Continue believing that understanding has the power to transform the way you see both the past and the future. If these words brought hope or a fresh perspective, consider sharing this story with someone who may need the same encouragement today. And if journeys like this continue to inspire you, remember to subscribe so we can keep exploring stories of purpose, growth, and meaningful connections together. One day, you may look back on this very moment and realize that the greatest revelation was never simply that someone finally understood your worth. It was that both journeys had quietly become ready for a future that neither heart could have fully embraced until now.